Welcome back, everyone. In this video, we are going to dive into modifying our button component by thinking about how we can leverage style components in order for us to make our code a little bit more solid in other ways than just the styling aspect. So what I'm going to do first is I am going to show you one of the patterns that emerges with style components that you may not have used yet. So inside, again, I'm going to convert button styles over to a JSX file. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to import in styled from styled components. And now what I'm going to do is when thinking about buttons, we know that generally speaking, the button has some base styles, and then depending on the class of either Google sign-in or inverted, or potentially any future additional stylings we add, they just modify some of these values, but they do inherit a large portion of the base styles for this button. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to create a new base button component. And this is going to be a styled button component that has all of the base styles here for what we had before on our button container. So now this base button is the normal button without any of the additional classes on it. What we can do for another button, let's call it our Google sign-in button, is we can actually extend on the base button the same way that we were doing it with the link component. So I mentioned before, you can take any component and add additional styling on top of it. And because our base button is just a button, we can now say, hey, this new component extends upon the base button these additional stylings that are unique to just the actual Google button. And similarly, we want to do the same thing for the inverted styles. So here, what I'm going to do, I'm just going to copy this over. And once again, I want to duplicate this button with a new inverted button, which is equal to styled on base button. And inside, I'm going to paste my inverted styling. And then just delete this now. So now we have three types of buttons: inverted, Google sign-in, and the base button. What we want to do inside of our button component is modify and import the correct style components now. So I want to import in from button styles. I'm going to bring in the base button. I'm going to bring in the Google sign-in button. And I'm also going to bring in the inverted button. So now that I have these three buttons, what we had before was this button type classes object. However, we didn't really get to leverage it as well as we wanted to. Now, what I mean by this is that when you think about this button type allows us to not have to pass strings. Instead, we can directly just use this object, which allows us to leverage autocomplete. Autocomplete anywhere just means that if you type button type classes dot, you actually will automatically see that there is Google and inverted as options that you can choose. This makes it a lot easier for us to import in button type classes anytime we want to figure out, hey, what are those different button types that render different styles of buttons? You can just use this object instead of trying to figure out by typing in a string and then coming to this component and checking. I'll show you what I mean once we finish writing this out. So in order for us to leverage this now, what I can do is I can create a new function called getButton. And what getButton should do is it should take the button type string and it should return us back one of these three button components. Because remember, these are individual components now. So what I'm going to do is say, hey, I'm going to get back a button type. And by default, I want there to be a base button because the base button is what's going to push to this base button component. So by default, I'm going to say there is a base. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to say, okay, the button type's default value, if none is passed, is button type classes dot base. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to return back from a special map object. And this map object is going to be passed the button type value. So we're essentially saying, hey, what I want is off of this button type, return me the specific component that I want. And the specific components are going to be mapped here. So first there's button type classes like this, dot base. If I get base, then I want to return the base button. So here we just want to return the literal functional component right now. Similarly, I'm going to repeat this 3 times for the other types. If there's Google, then what I want to return is the Google sign-in button. And finally, if there is inverted, then I want to return back the inverted button. And now I'm going to save this. And what we can do now is we can take this get button and come into our button component. And what we'll say is that the actual button that we need to render, so the custom button in this particular case, is equal to calling get button and passing it the button type. Now what we do is that this component is now pointing to one of the 3 relevant buttons. So we can take this button and replace it with this current button right here. Like so. And now we don't need these class names anymore. All of the other props we still want to spread through. But now what we can do is leverage this button type class anywhere we're using the button. So let me show you. First, let's go into our sign-in form component. Here we're using a Google button. So in order for us to leverage it, we want to say, hey, take in the button type classes. And we're going to come down here. And what we can say is, instead of button type pointing to the string Google, which we can make a mistake on, what we can do now is we can render button type classes.google. And now if we save this, if we come back to our application and let's sign out and then go to our sign in page, we see that we still have our Google button. Similarly now, let's go to our actual product form, which is where we show our other button type. Here we use inverted. So now if I import in button type classes, and instead of button type, again, I pass in button type.inverted. If I save this, I come back here, I go to the shop. There we see we have our inverted button. But the main advantage of doing this style of pattern is that now we can really just leverage this object that very easily tells us all the styles of buttons. We don't have to guess for that string. We don't have to mistype that string. These are all ways to eliminate the error of people, humans, writing code. And this is one of the big advantages, and it kind of actually gives us a little insight into a different kind of pattern where it's very intuitive now for us to look at these different components and see them as what kind of styling is relevant. Because we know, oh, there's base buttons, and then these similar additional components are just additional styling on top of base buttons. It's much more intuitive to look at components than it is to read giant walls of CSS and Sass code. But this is the new pattern that we really can leverage now utilizing style components. So now that we've learned these 2 main forms of using style components, we've done it with our navigation and we've done it with the button. My challenge to you is to convert the rest of the application over to style components. So once you've done that, join me in the next video where we will discuss perhaps some of the more challenging style components that I found to be ones to convert. There's a lot to go through. If you want to compare ahead of time, I'm going to post a repo link inside of your resources folder that will show the entire application migrated over to style components. If not, join me in the next video where we'll discuss some of the ones that I find a little bit more challenging to think about. I'll see you in the next video.